other thing that's possible is that your mind is kind of using that as a metaphor to help you understand a particular principle. It's like, okay, maybe it's not necessarily safe for you to understand what really happened in this life, so we're going to put it in this other context to give you the same kind of general idea of what was happening, so it's easier to understand and deal with, right? Because your mind is only going to show you things that it feels is safe for you to see.
All right, guys, we are going to talk hypnosis today. Excited for this one. We got Ryan here today, hypnosis expert. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. When did you get into all this?
Back in 2019, 2020, I was doing a lot of work on myself back in 2019, got some men's groups. One of the guys there was talking about emotional baggage and that sort of thing. And it was like, raised Catholic, got some of that. So went and did a session with him, just kind of felt lighter. It's like, if you're carrying around 50 pounds of stuff, get rid of 30 pounds, everything's easier. I was at that point in my career where it's time for the next big thing. I was thinking about becoming a psychologist, but I was going to take about 6 years and $500,000 to get done. And that's unappealing in your 40s. So I got certified as a hypnotist. It took about 6 weeks and $2,000. And that was in February 2020. So right after I got certified, everything shut down, right? And I was working intelligence work at the time, so I couldn't work from home because everything I did was classified. I ended up working with a bunch of guys online. I found out I kind of had a talent for it. Got some more training, started my business in April of 2020, went full-time in October.
Nice. So pretty recent though.
Yeah. It's been about 4.5, 5 years. Yeah.
Nice. And were you able to use it on yourself, or how did it develop for your personal development?
Well, it's kind of interesting is that when you're talking about personal change and working on yourself, if you're kind of at war with yourself, your mind doesn't really let you do a lot of changes on its own because it doesn't actually trust you in a lot of ways, right? If you're at war, then it's not doing what you say it should for a reason. A lot of the changes you want to make are to allow you to do stuff it thinks are bad or dangerous. So in my own journey, it was really kind of frustrating because I know exactly what was wrong, exactly how to fix it, not be able to do it. So I had to hire somebody else to fix it for me. But a lot of things in that journey, I was working about 3 or 4 years there trying to figure out what was going on in my head. I was talking about before the show, it turns out I have autism, didn't get diagnosed until last year. So, growing up autistic in Kansas, really kind of hard. Do the world, work for everybody else and not for me. So for a very long time, the way I kind of kept myself going in life, kind of make life worth living, was to be in service of that greater good. Work for, be that knight in shining armor, kind of that kind of stuff, trying to save the world. That worked up until 2020, realized the world rather stubbornly does not want to be saved, which is kind of when I started to work with people one-on-one. But that still put me in a position where I couldn't get what I needed in life. That sort of started that whole personal development journey to try and figure out how to get that done. And along the way, I kind of realized that I tried everything, psychology and CBT and psychedelics and spiritual stuff, energy healing and all that kind of stuff. And all of it helped, but none of it really fixed the problem.
Right.
So I kind of had to dig in deeper and figure out why that was and kind of figure out what things actually worked and how things actually worked in the back of your head in order to find out a way to kind of fix myself.
Yeah, you got to get it to the root cause. And a lot of times you don't even know what that is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're forming these thought patterns from ages 0 to 6 for the most
100%,
part, right?
100%. And the other thing is very much a rational mind, like sort of left brain versus right brain issue. Okay. When you're going through that space of like 0 to 6 years old, you really don't have your intellectual capacity online, the rationality. So you're doing everything from a very emotional kind of perspective. The emotional mind is looking at things kind of like from a series of events, patterns over time, looking at that forest rather than the individual trees. But as you grow older, we tend to focus so much on that left brain sort of perspective because this is what we can identify. It makes a lot of sense. It's rational. Understand. We can reach out and touch it. It means we leave behind those emotional conclusions. That's kind of what I realized we had to do is we have to understand where these emotional high-level beliefs come from and fix those because they're creating the context that we interpret all of this stuff from. So it's kind of like I'm not good enough being applied to individual situations. Something wrong with me being applied to individual situations. If we're always focusing on this, we're basically playing whack-a-mole for the rest of our lives. But if we fix these things up here, now all this stuff changes, right? So if you think about having like a big box in your head, it's label on it says, I'm not good enough. There's a million different events in that box. A million different things that made you believe that. This typical way to do is take the stuff out, put it in a different box. That takes forever because there's millions of stuff in there and more stuff gets added every day.
Right.
That's why we kind of get stuck in this process of always self-improving and fixing trauma and so forth and so on. But there's a label on the box. So why not just take the label off, put a new one on? Change I'm not good enough to I am good enough. Now everything in there means I'm good enough. And you don't have to deal with it anymore.
That's a good point because a lot of stuff happens to people and it's on them how they want to interpret it, right?
Exactly.
So they could say that's a bad incident or they could reframe that mindset.
Exactly. But it's not a conscious thing, right? Because all those emotional responses happen before you become consciously aware of them. So the judgments can be made in the back of the head based on those processes. So you have to fix those things in the back of your head in the first place.
Got it. So that's where hypnosis comes in.
Exactly.
So you're not able to consciously say these millions of things that happen to me, maybe I should look at it differently. It's got to be sub. Shout out to today's sponsor, Specialized Recruiting Group. When your company has a position to fill, are you really seeing the best candidates? Sure, you get plenty of resumes, but you may be missing an untapped resource, ideal candidates who are not currently job searching. The good news is you just need Specialized Recruiting Group. Specialized Recruiting Group is ready to find the talent you need. Go to srgpros.com, see how our recruitment specialists with a deep understanding of experience and expertise you need can find the right fit for your business. After all, you deserve to see the best candidates possible, both active and passive. We're here to guide you and help you find a role that fits, all without costing a dime. Meet Specialized Recruiting Group, offering a tailored approach to find your next role. Go to srgpros.com and get on the right course. Your local Specialized Recruiting Group team knows which businesses are hiring and can offer you a path to contract and full-time roles. Take the next step in your career by starting srgpros.com. Conscious.
Exactly. The problem is that we have this thing called, talk about in hypnosis being the critical factor, kind of the barrier between the conscious and the unconscious mind. What that means is in your waking state, when you're conscious, your unconscious mind judges true and false based on what it already believes. So if that's the case, then anything that doesn't match what you already believe is false by definition, gets ignored. So how do you prove it wrong if it's ignoring all evidence to the contrary? Right? So you can consciously say this is the way it should be, but if it doesn't match this, that part doesn't change. Hypnosis gives you access directly to that unconscious mind, kind of lets you bypass that, right? Which means I can now have that conversation directly with that part of your mind, do that persuasion work and that reframing to get it to see things from a different perspective.
That's so interesting. What are the more common issues people are coming to you trying to solve?
What I do is very sort of programmatic and kind of like total transformation. A lot of times people are coming to me because of one of two reasons. Either number one, they're just kind of blocked in life, right? They know what they want to do. They've got this big vision. They know they have a lot of potential, but they're here and they should be here, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's just simply off limits for them. Talk about this in my book, Being in the Cage, right? Things are good. There's a roof over your head. Lights are on, food's on the table, but everything's kind of like relatively mediocre compared to where you should be. The second one is actually trickier. It's called the treadmill, okay? These are people who are typically highly successful, highly performing, but they're stuck in this like constant cycle of chasing goal after goal after goal, comparing themselves to the next guy higher up on the ladder, right? For those people, it's a situation where they're not able to actually be satisfied with what they're doing. They never actually get to feel that reward, right? They never actually get to enjoy their full life. And quite often, that's the only part of your life is really working. Right. The rest of their life is usually a mess, their relationships and their health and so forth and so on. So for those kind of people, it's about being able to step off that treadmill, still be able to perform and do really cool things, but live a more full life.
That's so interesting. Yeah, a lot of people just get stagnant in life, whether it's 100%. Business, dating, health.
Exactly.
And it's probably these blocks that they don't even know about.
Yeah, well, it's like when you're growing up and things are bad, it's almost like you're playing a game that can't be won. Right? The rules are always changing, goalposts always moving, never seem to be able to win. At a certain point in life, we hit a point where it's like, okay, now I have some agency. I start getting high school, able to do some of your stuff on your own, get into college. Okay, great. You start to build your life. So essentially select a game to play that you can win. Find something you're good at, start cranking down that road, start cranking up the wins. At a certain point in life, that kind of stops working for you, right? Because it's not actually delivering the real satisfaction you want. Yeah, I'm a successful entrepreneur. I've got millions of dollars, but I still don't feel like I'm good enough. Still don't have that, that insecurity, that anxiety is still there. That's at what point where we realize this isn't working. It's not actually solving the problem.
Right.
That's when you have to start digging deeper, figuring out, okay, what exactly is that problem and how do I need to really solve it?
Absolutely. Have you ever had a client that was immune to being hypnotized?
Not exactly. People talk about suggestibility and people are harder and easier to hypnotize. And that's kind of based upon a bunch of academic studies and the way they do it in like Stanford and Oxford when they're studying hypnosis. The way they do it is they kind of run people through a standard hypnosis induction and see how they respond. But hypnosis is kind of a very voluntary process, right? I'm leading you through a series of steps, kind of like a guided meditation, just taking you to your mind.
Right.
So if you want to follow along, I'll get you there. If you don't want to follow along, nothing I can do to get you there. So if I'm sitting there trying to do a test on you and you don't want to play the game, you're going to come across as not suggestible, not able to be hypnotized. Whereas if you want to play the game, it's easy to get you there. So it's more a question of willingness, capability.
Right.
If you're talking about people who are like schizophrenic or psychotic, kind of out on that edge, or you just don't have that intellectual capability, I mean, that's obviously a different story. But for the mass majority of people, it's more a question of willingness than capability.
Yeah, because you see those magic shows or whatever, and they're on stage, and some people knock out.
Yes.
Like they're just super open to it.
Yeah, they've decided they want to play the game, so they're going to play the game.
Right. And I've seen them tell them to do whatever and they'll do it. It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, but that's for show. What you do is
Very
completely
different,
different, right?
Yeah.
I like what you do. I've also tried past life hypnosis. I'd love to hear your theory on that. What do you think's going on there?
Man, could be a number of things. Like could be that there are past lives. You're actually being able to go back and experience those. The other thing that's possible is that your mind is kind of using that as a metaphor to help you understand a particular principle. It's like, okay, maybe it's not necessarily safe for you to understand what really happened in this life. So we're going to put it in this other context to give you the same kind of general idea of what was happening. So it's easier to understand and deal with, right? Because your mind is only going to show you things that it feels is safe for you to see. So if you've been through something really traumatic and it's like, okay, this is too much. Okay, let me give you this other story over here. This happened to somebody else. It happened to you in a different life. It's not really happening to you. That makes it easier for you to be able to understand and experience it and still get the gist of what's happening and the understanding that you need without actually having to push all those traumatic buttons.
Interesting. Have you ever tried that form of hypnosis? Are you opposed to it or?
No, it's just not something that's really interested me.
Okay.
You know?
Because you've tried psychedelics, you've tried other energy healing and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and every single thing that I tried is fascinating. Had all kinds of interesting results, right? But I'm worried about what's happening in this life, what I'm doing now.
Right.
I don't really care what happened then unless it actually applies to this now. And I find that focusing on what's happening in this lifetime has given me so much more information, understanding, and agency to change how I'm living this life.
Yeah, because you're getting down to what's actually running the shots. You know, energy healing feels good. I agree. I've tried it, but then a week later, I'm back to the same problems.
Well, it's kind of like I'll often ask my clients this question of like, okay, what part of you is you? Right? You got your conscious mind, your rational mind, your emotional mind, your instinctive mind. You got your neurochemistry, got your physical body. Start talking about like the body keeps the score. Now you've got an emotional body. Talk about energy healing. Great. You've got an energetic body. Start getting a little more esoteric. You got an astral body. You got a soul. Right? So what of that is you? And to me, I'm all of that and probably more. And you can see a problem in your life as originating in any one of those aspects of self. Right? So a lot of the stuff that's happening is in your unconscious mind. That's your emotional, instinctive, and your rational pieces, right? But if you've got a problem in your energetic body, trying to fix it there, exactly what you want to do. But trying to fix a psychological problem from the energetic space is probably not going to be effective. Right. So it's actually, the first step is trying to figure out where the problem really is, where you can address it where it actually is.
I saw some article yesterday. They're getting close to proving that there is a soul.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
'Cause that's been a huge debate, like forever between religions, right?
Absolutely.
So that could be major.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to your concept of reality. It's like 3 dimensions plus time, material reality, all there is, or is there more to it? Because if there's more to it, then soul isn't actually material, right? It's probably reflected in some way, but how do you measure something that's not here?
Right.
Right.
What's been your belief of all that?
Oh, I 100% believe that there's a soul, that the divine exists, that there is more to life and reality than 3 dimensions plus time. Now, my personal opinion, I'm not entirely sure that consciousness exists in 3 dimensions.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you can't touch it, see it, hear it, taste it, smell it, can't measure it.
So how do we act like if we're making a decision? Isn't that the conscious mind though?
Yes.
So you don't think that exists?
I don't think it exists in material reality. I think everything's connected, right? And so things are sort of reflected into material reality from some of those other places. Right?
Interesting.
But it's more like this physical body is translating stuff for that part of us to be able to understand, and it's kind of being translated back and forth. Yeah, that's my idea.
No, there is a theory of everything's just light, right? And we're kind of manifesting this microphone right here. It's just light.
Yep.
Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, because 3rd dimension, everything is different here.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
I want to talk about addictions. I saw a lot of addictions growing up, mainly my father. Alcohol, he was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yep.
Then once he got off that, he was on the vapes and the nicotine. It was just constant addiction after addiction. So have you seen hypnosis help with addictions? Yeah,
it's not something I specialize in personally, but yes, hypnosis is incredibly effective for addictions, especially like smoking. You usually quit smoking like 1 hypnosis session.
Wow.
It's one of the most effective ones. That's on the American Lung Association. They actually have a list of hypnotists to actually help you quit smoking. Yeah, absolutely. It's that effective. Now, in terms of addiction in general, the way I kind of look at it is that the addiction that you have is kind of like the tool you're using to make a miserable life worth living, right? Life sucks. Everything's terrible, but this gives you some kind of hope. It kind of gives you some kind of out, right? So to me, there's kind of 2 pieces that you need to do. There's a physical actual addiction piece, but there's also the psychological and all that other stuff you need to do to actually make life worth living on its own. Because until it is, you're going to still need some kind of crutch, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wish I could have just told him to try hypnosis out. He spent so much money on those nicotine, those gum things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they smell like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hopped one addiction to another. It seems like a lot of people these days have social media addiction, porn addiction, It's more digital now.
Yeah.
You know, even cannabis, I would say some people think you can't get addicted to it, but I think you can.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. We're straying away from alcohol, luckily, but I feel like there's always going to be something people are addicted to.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because when you look at like something like social media addiction or like porn addiction, you're talking about like core identity stuff, right? You know, alcohol is a physical addiction. Cannabis is physical, right? But when you're talking about things like information environment you're consuming, the world you're kind of comparing yourself against, like that gets really dangerous because that's actually like psychological impacting your view of what you are.
When I was first on social media, the first few years, I just compared myself to everyone else. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah.
I had to get out of that mindset. And even just like watching likes and views, like that's pretty bad too.
100%.
To tie your identity to that.
Yep. A lot of that kind of comes down to self-esteem, right? If you're kind of coming into the world, if you've got this idea of like, I'm not good enough or there's something wrong with me, that's not an answer we can accept, right? So we try and find a way to prove it wrong. And metrics like likes and views and everything else are a nice little scoreboard to use to prove that, okay, I'm good enough, I measure up and so forth and so on. You go back to that whole idea that the unconscious mind only believes what it already believes, and it's hard to prove that from the outside in. That belief never changes, which is why that comparison is so toxic, because that never ends. You can never get enough points.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to talk confidence too. I had massive confidence issues growing up, and I still have some today in certain things. Have you seen hypnosis help with building confidence?
Yeah, but I think that we kind of get confidence wrong in a certain way. We think that confidence is something we gain, right? This idea that confidence comes from competence, right? The more capable you get with a skill or something like that, then the more confident you become.
Right.
And that's true. Like you start out driving, you're really young, nervous and everything else. And as you drive more and more and more, you get more and more confidence easier, right? But if that was the case, confidence comes from competence. Everybody's already 100% competent at being them. So everybody should be 100% confident in themselves. They're not, right? So the way I look at it is confidence is about what you gain, it's about what you lose. Lose the fear and the doubt, certainty along the way, right? So if you don't like who you are, it's really hard to have actual confidence. Parts of you you're doubting, you're uncertain about, right? You're afraid of in some way. So the confidence comes from actually getting to know what you actually are, understanding it, accepting it, forgiving it, and integrating.
Wow.
But when we don't like who we are, we try and be somebody else.
Love that.
This got to be somebody else. So a lot of the ways we improve confidence is by being better at the thing we're trying to become and convincing ourselves that that's who we are. But again, go back to the believe what already believes, which is why there's always that tension.
Yeah.
Right. You got Alex Hormozy talking about having, building a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are, right? But if you got one piece of undeniable proof, that should be enough. So why do you need a stack? Why do you keep adding to that stack, right? That's that trap you get in of constantly having to prove you're something other than who you actually are.
I love that. That's so spot on. Because when my confidence was at low points, I was pretending to be someone I wasn't.
100%.
I was trying to fit in with people I wasn't meant to fit in with.
Exactly. But once you get to a place where you can accept and own it, who you are, then you just get to be you. There's no questions anymore. That's where you get that full confidence.
Right. That's so cool. Yeah, it's about what you lose. Wow.
Yes.
I never thought of it that way. That's so spot on. Wow. When it comes to dealing with emotions, is that something you think can be trained? Like how you react?
Maybe, maybe not. Okay, because for one thing, that's a subconscious process, right? There's a great number of studies back in Germany in the 1970s that prove that we consciously understand something or experience something about a half a second after it happened, right? So there's about a half a second where your unconscious mind is doing all this processing and taking action and so forth and so on. That's the place where the emotion is generated, and then you experience it. If you can't train your subconscious mind from the outside in, a lot of what this emotional control and so forth and so on is actually like emotional suppression. I don't want to feel this, or I'm not going to react to that emotion.
Right.
But you can't actually change how you feel the emotions or how those emotions are generated unless you get in the subconscious mind to figure out how they're being generated in the first place, what they mean, change how that actually works. Okay. Talking about things like meditation, that's kind of a way of training yourself to distance yourself from your thoughts and emotions. Training disassociation. Okay. I look at that as like a very bad thing.
Really? Meditation?
In terms of disassociation.
Okay.
Yes. The reason why is because I look at every emotion as basically a signal or a question, especially negative emotions, right? Fear and anxiety and so forth and so on. Each one of those emotions, I kind of go into this in my book a little bit, has a reason, right? It has a question it's asking. If you're angry, it's because something out there is messing with you and you need to make it go away. You're forced to do so. Figure out what you'll, right? If you're anxious, that means there's a problem out there in the environment, hasn't found you yet. Figure out what that is, right? That's that freeze response from a survival perspective. If you look at depression, basically you're in a situation where you're out of options, right? You just kind of have to endure. That's that flop survival response, okay? So each of these negative emotions is trying to tell you what's happening in the world around you and how you need to fix it, okay? So to me, the better way to do it is to learn how to engage with your emotions. Because if each emotion is trying to help you navigate the world, it's trying to help you figure things out, it's trying to help you get to where you want to be, even if it's a negative emotion. The difficulty is we define negative emotions as pain. Something is painful, you have to avoid it. The more that negative emotion you experience, especially when you're young and you're looking at it as pain, the bigger that survival response is, that survival trigger, right?
Right.
So while emotions are pain, you have to avoid it. You can't actually use them to help you.
Dang.
So one of the things I do with my clients very, very often is to redefine emotions from pain to signal. And once emotions are no longer pain, they become useful signals. Now you can engage with them as long as you need to figure things out. It also does an interesting change. If emotions are no longer pain, then they no longer come from emotional wounds, right? Now there's nothing to heal.
Wow.
It also means that trauma takes on a very different perspective. It's not something that happened to you. To me, trauma is a situation where you weren't able to find a way to win. You're stuck in a situation, can't figure it out. Your mind is screaming at you for help and you don't have an answer. That's it.
Yeah.
But even in those situations, you're still breathing, which means you found a way to navigate it successfully. That's a win. If somebody tries to destroy you, throws everything at you, including the kitchen sink, and you're still standing, won. So even in those situations where we define as highly traumatic, they're extremely difficult to navigate, they were extremely painful from an emotional perspective, we still came out on top. Doesn't mean we didn't take our hits. Right? But if you look at guys like Conor McGregor or Mike Tyson, they get in the ring, even when they win, they get the snot kicked out of them, right?
Yeah.
And part of the problem is we're looking at life in survival terms in terms of fight and flight. Fight something off, you don't get hurt. Successfully run away, you don't get hurt. So there's that underlying assumption that if you got hurt, you lost. Threat to your survival, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's a fascinating take because I think as men, we're like running away from emotions, we're suppressing them,
100%.
you know? We're not dealing with them, but you're saying to use them as a signal.
Yes.
And then find out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, they're tools helping you navigate the world. And for men, it's kind of a little bit different because we're built for violence. We have to learn how to not respond emotionally because it's too dangerous to do so.
Right.
But that tends to express in don't cry, don't be afraid, so forth, so on, the suppression.
Yeah.
Which means you're actually not allowed to even be fully human, right? If you're going down that road. Whereas me, the better way to do it is be able to fully experience and engage with those and still control the way you respond.
I love that. Yeah. My dad had a bipolar disorder. So
same here.
I think I had some trauma from that, to be honest.
Sure.
Because I didn't know if he'd yell at me or if he'd be happy. I never knew if I said the wrong thing.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the situations I talked about this with my clients a lot is this idea of the game that can't be won, right? You're in a situation, nothing you do seems to get to what you need. Nothing you do really seems to work. So after a while, it's easy to start blaming who you are rather than things you're doing.
Right. Victim mindset,
right? But at the same time, if you're a kid, you don't really have any choice about the environment you're in. You can't change it, right? So you have to find a way to navigate it. Can't do that. Must be you because you're the common factor in all these situations, right? But the situations that your dad is bipolar, doesn't know it, it's uncontrolled, then nothing you do or don't do matters.
That's true.
Right? It's going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with you. The game is rigged. Losing an expected outcome, right? So there's nothing wrong with you if you're losing a game that's rigged. But we don't think that way as kids. Most of us don't even think that way as adults.
No. I will say, a little side note, microdosing mushrooms helped him.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. He, in his later years, he was very, not amazing with his emotions, but a lot better.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I love psychedelics. I think that those are such amazing tools. You can do so many really great things with it. And one of the best things about it, I think, is kind of opening new pathways and opening new possibilities. It's kind of like expanding what's possible for you.
Right.
Just doing that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because there's a lot of limiting beliefs.
1 million.
You know, we attract them growing up.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember just aiming for like when I was growing up, I was like, I want to be a millionaire.
Yep.
Like that's just a belief. And then when you get there, what's next?
Well, it goes back to that treadmill. Those continually moving targets. You say, if I get 1 million, then I'll have made it. That'll prove that I'm good enough, so forth and so on. You make 1 million, that feels good for a minute because you succeeded. That's that accomplishment, right? Got that pride. All of a sudden that fades and now you're back to still not feeling good enough.
Right.
Great. Got to make 2 million. Made that 2, same thing happens.
Never ends.
Make that 5, still feels that same way. Trying to prove that feeling wrong. Doesn't work from the outside in, got to do from the inside out.
All right. So what's the proper goal setting technique then, you think?
I don't set goals.
You don't?
I don't.
Wow.
I build systems.
Okay.
The reason why I don't is, number one, if I choose a goal, I'm kind of eliminating all that possibility, right? I say, this is the thing I'm going for, which means I'm not going after any other thing. Number one, the goal I set today is based on what I can conceive of today. What if next week or next month I came up with a better idea?
Right.
Right. So for me, it's more about building a system of like, okay, what am I trying to achieve in life? What's my mission? What's my purpose? Let me just figure out ways to do that. Right. Kind of having a North Star and kind of a mission to take you there is a way of navigating. So for me, my North Star is like greatness. I choose greatness. I'm pursuing greatness.
Right.
And the mission to get me there is to end human suffering and unleash the fullness of human potential to the maximum extent possible for me to engineer in this lifetime. Figure if I'm starting to do that, it's going to take me to greatness. Right. And I don't have to figure out how that looks or feels.
I love it. Yes, you have a general direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that more than specific number goals.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because the goals, if you're setting them as specific numbers and so forth and so on, is you're playing that game. You're playing life like a video game, trying to hit a high score, right? Trying to measure things, trying to prove to yourself again, right? But if you're at that place where you like who you are, you got the self-esteem, that value you've created for yourself, you don't need anything on the outside in, create it. It's going from playing life like Alex Ramosi, trying to make millions and millions of dollars, build that stack of undeniable proof, playing like Elon Musk. He's not trying to make the millions. He's trying to change the course of history,
right?
Of course, human development. It's a very, very different game, but you only get to play that when you're not measuring things, don't have a scoreboard.
That's interesting. A lot of people have a scoreboard. I'd say.
Oh, yeah, so much. So much.
I mean, they teach it to you growing up as a kid,
100%.
Sports and just social media followers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that idea of, I don't like who I am. So I got to be somebody different.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to be aware of that. Cause even myself, I'm like, I want to climb the podcast rankings and everything, Yep.
And it's not that that's a bad thing when you go up that mountain and so forth and so on, but there's a difference between doing it because you're trying to prove something to yourself or doing it for the love of the game.
Good point.
Right? How far can I go? What can I accomplish? You got the guy like Michael Phelps, Olympic swimmer, crushed like 1 million different records, came out with like 30,000 gold medals.
Yep.
Why? Because he loved what he's doing. How far can I go?
Yeah.
Right?
I love that. You mentioned purpose earlier. Do you get a lot of people coming to you struggling to find their purpose?
Sometimes. A lot of these guys that do come to me with that kind of thing, it's because they've been on that treadmill. They've been playing life like a video game. They know that's not what they need, right? But my job is to help them figure that out. My job is to help them become fully them so that the purpose becomes obvious.
I like that. You served in the military. Did you have a lot of trauma from that?
No, not really. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a Russian linguist. Never really went anywhere deployed or anything like that. I was there from 97 to 02. So right around the time 9/11 happened was about the time I was getting out. From there, I went to the Air National Guard, supporting like Predators and U-2s and working intel for F-16s and F-22s. But again, never really saw a lot of stuff. A lot of things that traumatic were from working in the intelligence world where I was working like counterterrorism and counterproliferation.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw some stuff there.
Saw some stuff there for sure.
Yeah, I had Chris Voss on the show, FBI negotiator. He lives here. Man, he's heard and seen some stuff.
Oh yeah.
He said he still sees it daily.
Yeah, you're dealing with the worst parts of the world and the worst parts of humanity and some of the worst conditions. So yeah, it's gonna affect you.
Yeah,
and that's kind of why I had to get out of that world after a while. It was just simply
was it too much on you mentally or?
Yeah, mentally and emotionally.
Because you would get late night calls, right?
Well, I was working shift work and things like that. So it's kind of like you roll in and all of a sudden you're dealing with all kinds of horrible stuff. And then after that, you get off work and you go hang out at the bar with your friends doing happy hour. And you can't talk about anything, right? There's no support for you, right?
Crazy.
And again, I'm autistic. I can't lie to myself about what was happening. Right. So I just had to carry the full weight of what I was being involved with.
And you had no one to talk to. Were you married at the time?
I was.
Okay. Were you talking to your wife at least?
Can't.
Wow. It's that deep.
How are you supposed to talk about classified stuff with your wife? How's the stuff today at work? Oh, it's good. Did some cool stuff.
Wow.
Right. How are you supposed to explain that?
That's a tough job.
Yeah.
I think any job where there's a lot of secrecy involved and it's just traumatic.
Really hard.
Damn.
That's why you see like, police, EMS, doctors, military a lot. Why? Because you can't talk about it. You can't share it. There's no place to let that out. So you just carry that full weight yourself and often it just really tears you apart.
Yeah. Getting married next year. Any advice for that?
So I'm looking to get married again myself. And I'm kind of looking at two things in terms of compatibility and alignment, right? Compatibility is like being compatible and having that kind of commonality and that ability to communicate around like intelligence or communicate or consciousness, your emotional state, sexual compatibility, right? But there's also alignment around like values and vision and lifestyle. Have to have both, right? Having one without the other is going to be a mess, right? So it's all about making sure that you're on the same page, right? Do you have a shared mission, a shared purpose? Are you heading in the same direction to create something together? If you are, things are probably going to work out. Two reasonable people trying to make the same thing happen, moving in the same direction, you're going to be able to figure it out. If you're not on the same page, not moving in the same direction, you don't have the same vision, everything's going to be a mess.
That's what happened to you.
Often. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't find out that I was bipolar or autistic until last year. So pretty much every relationship up until then was destined to fail. Like it can't be anything other than a train wreck when you've got somebody with, undiagnosed serious mental health issues that's not being treated,
Why do you think it took so long to get a diagnosis?
Oh, man. For the autism, I was growing up in Kansas in the 70s and 80s. Like nobody really had any idea what that was back then. And I figured out a way to kind of navigate the world with it. I basically turned my brain into a machine that reverse engineered human behavior, and it worked well enough. As far as the bipolar goes, it's kind of combined with the ADHD. I've got very low dopamine levels to begin with. So my mood is typically low to begin with. So a lot of the things I was experiencing was depression. I never had that high manic episode until I started getting the ADHD treated. So once my dopamine came up to normal, now it opened out the space for that manic episode.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So after about 3 months of doing, playing around with things like Adderall and Wellbutrin, that's what triggered the manic episode. And because there were no brakes on the train, I just went off the cliff.
Damn.
Yeah.
Are you on any medication right now?
Yeah.
So you're still relying on it?
Yeah. Well, it's when you've had a severe episode as that, you can't go without, because the odds and the probability it's going to happen again are extremely high.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about manic episodes. So once you have one, it kind of opens the floodgates. It's 100%. Like getting the first concussion.
100%. Yeah.
Damn.
So it took me about 14, 15 months to figure out the right medications that to keep me stable and actually allow me to function. So that was a gauntlet to go through.
Holy crap. Yeah. Sorry to hear you went through that, man.
It sucks, but at the same time, it's just kind of cranking through and trying stuff out until you find something that works.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I'd done all this work on myself beforehand to get myself to an extremely solid state. So it was just a situation of okay, this is frustrating. It's annoying. There's nothing I can do but go through it. So why feel bad about it? It's more about the frustration. It's why am I not there? Why am I not there? The hope of having it work for a few weeks and then all the side effects kick in, trying to figure out what's next, right? But it wasn't a terribly stressful or difficult situation. Obviously, my business took a big hit.
Yeah. Lost
my girlfriend, all this kinds of stuff happened, but just something you're going through. And all you have to do is just keep on going. One day you're going to figure it out. As soon as you do, you're off to the races again.
Yeah.
So I finally hit that point where I'm about 100% about 2-3 months ago. So now I've been back on that track, rebuilding things, getting things back up and running, get myself out there, and it's been fun.
Let's go. How aware of you are you with the bipolar stuff? Was that a shock to you when you got the diagnosis?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah. I had no idea that was down there.
Whoa.
No idea. Because again, I'd never really had that high manic episode that in a way that I recognized. Kind of looking back at my life now, it's yeah, probably there. Yeah, probably there. Yeah, probably there.
Did you get in a lot of fights growing up?
No. Never been in a fight in my life.
Oh, well.
Not really.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I've never really put myself in a position where I had to.
Okay.
And after I got through the Marine Corps and so forth and so on, I've got a certain presence, right? Where you
Respect,
don't look like a victim. You don't look like a victim, so people tend not to mess with you.
Yeah. What are you working on next?
Well, there's a lot of different things. Based on what I've kind of understood about how the mind works and focusing on that kind of emotional belief set and so forth and so on, there's a lot of things I'm working on to try and get that out there and explore a lot of different ways to apply it. One of the things I'm doing these days is working with a lot of veterans groups, kind of locally as well as around the country, to sort of see how we can apply this to things like PTSD and stress disorders and things like that. Because a lot of that is correlated with high neuroticism trait, your tendency towards negative thinking and negative self-image. So if we can correct that negative self-image and that negative worldview, that makes all that other stuff a heck of a lot easier to deal with. Kind of the techniques I use make that pretty quick.
I love it. I'll put you in touch with some veteran groups.
That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you working with any right now?
There's a entrepreneur group in Austin that I'm working with, and I'm kind of putting those feelers out with a couple other groups nationwide and one in the UK.
Nice.
So kind of still in the initial stages.
That's needed, man. I'm learning about all the trauma these veterans are going through right now. Having them on the show, it's
absolutely
crazy.
Yeah, it's brutal. And there's just not the support from them. They do not get taken care of the way they
Not at all.
Nope.
I mean, maybe money-wise, but not mentally.
Not even money-wise.
Really? Disability?
Disability,
not enough.
It's so hard. Yeah, it's not nearly enough.
Yeah.
Not nearly.
I mean, with inflation these days,
yeah definitely not.
Man, a million today is not what it used to be.
No, not even close.
You used to be able to make $1 million and live off it.
Yep.
Now it's that's a house with interest.
Yep.
Crazy times, man. Well, dude, we'll link to your socials below. Anything else you want to close off with?
Yeah, I wrote a book called Winner Peace, How to End Any Conflict, Make Success Inevitable. It's kind of this whole process that I've developed, start to finish, all the theory behind it. As much as I can give you the benefit of working one-on-one in book format, I'll give you as much as I can.
Perfect. We'll link it below. It's on Audible?
It's on Audible as well.
Awesome. I'll check it out. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yup. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
Cheers.